Gentlemen, there's a moment every man faces when a woman who once craved your attention suddenly starts ignoring you. Whether it's a power play, a test, or a sign of disinterest, your reaction can either elevate your value or destroy it. The key is not to panic, chase, or react emotionally. Instead, you respond with unshakable poise and calculated detachment. Here's how to act, and how to destroy the ego that thought it could toy with your attention. When a woman starts ignoring you, the worst thing you can do is react impulsively. Most men immediately go into panic mode. They send multiple messages, ask if she's okay, try to win back her attention, and essentially throw away their power in an instant. This is exactly what she expects. When a woman begins to withdraw, especially if it's sudden or without a clear reason, it's often a test to see where you place her in your life, a test to see if you are emotionally reactive or if you are grounded in your masculine frame. She wants to see if you're the kind of man who can be shaken just by the absence of her validation. And here's the truth. Most men fail this test. The only response that truly commands respect and flips the power dynamic is complete silence. When she ignores you, ignore her right back, but not with bitterness or passive aggression. You do it with calm indifference, not a word, not a text. No sudden reaction on social media, no asking mutual friends about her. You let her disappear into the silence she created. This kind of silence is not about playing games. It's about enforcing your self-respect. You're communicating, without saying a word, that you are not dependent on her attention to validate your worth, that her absence doesn't affect your sense of self, that you don't chase, you attract, and most importantly, that your time and energy are reserved for those who reciprocate your presence. This silence isn't just external, it's internal too. It's about silencing the inner voice that tells you to pursue, to fix, to beg for answers. You have to learn to be at peace with the unknown. She may come back or she may not, but that's irrelevant when you realize your power isn't tied to her choices. When she doesn't hear from you, when she doesn't see any effort from your side to reclaim her attention, it forces her to reflect. In most cases, it makes her wonder if she overplayed her hand. It makes her feel the absence of your masculine presence. It makes her ego uncomfortable, and that's the key. Ego thrives on attention. Ego needs a reaction. Ego feeds off the idea that you're sitting there, overthinking, waiting, wondering. When you deny her ego the satisfaction of your reaction, you quietly destroy it. She expected you to chase. She expected to see signs that she still has emotional power over you. But when you remain completely unfazed, her power over you starts to crumble. You reclaim control by doing nothing. Silence becomes your loudest statement. It's the art of strategic detachment, the kind that separates boys from men. Real masculinity doesn't flinch when a woman withdraws. It doesn't plead. It doesn't justify. It simply pauses, observes, withdraws energy just as easily as it once gave it. Because a man who values himself doesn't tolerate inconsistency. He doesn't fight for attention that should come naturally. He becomes a mirror reflecting the same level of interest he receives. When she pulls back, he doesn't reach forward. He lets go, and that unnerves her more than any emotional reaction ever could. When you find yourself in a situation where a woman is ignoring you, it's essential to understand that her attention, or the lack thereof, should never define you. Instead of letting this situation dictate your emotional state, use it as a powerful opportunity to refocus your energy and invest it in something far more valuable, your own growth. This is the perfect time to immerse yourself in your goals, your passions, your health, and your personal development. The moment you shift your focus away from trying to win her back or fix whatever issue you think you might have with her. You put yourself in control of your own narrative. You are no longer waiting for someone to affirm your worth. Instead, you're busy affirming it to yourself through actions, not words. Start by becoming completely absorbed in your mission, your purpose. Whether it's advancing your career, learning a new skill, mastering an instrument, or diving deeper into any passion you've put on the back burner, now is the time to take it up a notch. When a woman sees that you're consistently leveling up in your life, that you're building something significant, she'll begin to recognize that your worth is not only rooted in her. You've become a man who has his own trajectory, who has his own value, and it's not contingent on whether or not she chooses to acknowledge it. At this point, it's not just about focusing on personal development for the sake of self-improvement. It's about becoming the best version of yourself so that you can create a life that others want to be a part of. You begin to elevate your physical health, your mental clarity, and your emotional resilience. This is where discipline comes in. If you've been neglecting your fitness or your well-being, now is the time to commit to it. Hit the gym, eat healthier, sleep better, push yourself to the limits and beyond. When you focus on cultivating strength, energy, and discipline, you not only improve your life, but also show that you are a man of action. You are no longer just existing. You are living with purpose, with intent, and with power. Moreover, don't just focus on physical transformation. Develop your mindset as well. Strengthen your emotional intelligence. Become more grounded. Start reading books that challenge your perspective and enhance your understanding of the world around you. Seek out wisdom that helps you navigate life's complexities with more ease and confidence. Engage in activities that expand your mind and spirit, whether that's through meditation, journaling, or exploring new intellectual interests. Make sure you're investing in becoming a well-rounded man who grows not only in physical strength, but also in character. When you do this, your energy becomes magnetic. You're no longer the man who's emotionally reactive and desperate for attention. You're the man who is steady, focused, and resolute in his purpose. Women are drawn to that energy because it's rare. It's attractive, and it signals that you are not easily swayed by external circumstances. Along with this personal growth, one of the most impactful things you can do is start transforming your external world as well. Start investing in your image. It's not about trying to impress anyone. It's about showing up for yourself in the best way possible. Revamp your wardrobe, refine your grooming habits, and start carrying yourself with the confidence that comes from knowing you're at your best. Your appearance should reflect the effort and care you're putting into yourself, and when she sees this transformation, she can't help but notice that you're no longer the man who will be left waiting for her validation. You've become the man who commands respect not through words, but through actions. As you continue to invest in yourself, you'll start to feel the difference in how you carry yourself. You'll begin to attract more people into your life, people who value you for who you are and what you bring to the table, not just your ability to cater to their needs. You'll notice that your confidence grows and that your actions speak louder than anything you could say. In turn, this will make you far less concerned with the attention of anyone who isn't reciprocating it. Women, particularly, are drawn to men who are engaged with their own lives, who have a sense of purpose, and who prioritize their own growth. They are not interested in men who are stagnant or dependent on them for emotional fulfillment. When you make these shifts in your life, you show her that you are not just a man who can be ignored. You are a man who is moving forward, with or without her. And the beauty of all this, as you grow, so does your value. She may start to notice your absence, but it's not because you're playing games or trying to manipulate her. It's because you've genuinely moved forward, and she's left to catch up with the new version of you. When you invest in yourself, you make it clear that your value doesn't fluctuate based on her actions. She begins to realize that, in fact, she might be the one who lost out on the opportunity to be a part of your life. And that realization will hit her ego harder than any words you could ever say. At this point, the focus shifts from being reactive to being assertively in control of your own life. When she begins to ignore you and you go silent, you're not just disappearing physically, you're shifting your entire energy to one that exudes exclusivity and mystery. This is about showing her that your presence is not a given, it is earned. And the way you do that is by proving that you're not someone who can be easily accessed. There's a powerful magnetism that comes with being hard to reach, and it's far more compelling than any overt displays of desperation or neediness. You have to understand that when you're constantly available, you diminish your own worth. Everyone knows that things that are easily accessible lose their value. Think about the difference between an exclusive, high-end product and something that's mass-produced and available everywhere. The rarity and the scarcity of something create demand, which creates desire. This is exactly how you should approach your energy and your time. You're not simply a convenience that can be reached whenever she feels like it. You're a man who has his own life, who is constantly moving forward, and whose time is valuable. To communicate this, it's not about being distant or cold. It's about being emotionally self-sufficient. When a woman sees that you're not always available, it challenges her assumptions and forces her to reconsider the dynamic between you two. It makes her realize that you are not someone who will drop everything just to cater to her whims. Instead, your time and attention are precious, and they are not given out freely. You make her work for it, not because you're playing hard to get, but because you have a life that you value, and your energy is reserved for those who show genuine interest and respect. Being unreachable doesn't just mean you're not physically present all the time. It's also about the way you engage with her when you are around. You stop being the person who is always available to chat, to hang out, or to entertain her whenever she feels like it. You become more selective with your energy and interactions. This selectivity makes you appear more attractive because it signals that your worth is not reliant on her constant attention. You have your own plans, your own passions, and your own vision for your life. This confidence and independence are incredibly magnetic because they highlight the fact that you are not a man who seeks validation from anyone, least of all her. Another key aspect of showing that you're unreachable is how you carry yourself in the public sphere. Whether it's your social media presence or how you conduct yourself in social situations, you should show that you're not living for anyone else's approval. You should post things that reflect your lifestyle, your passions, and your growth. Don't make every post about her or about trying to make her jealous. Instead, let her see that your life is fulfilling without her. You're enjoying yourself, you're socializing with friends, you're working on yourself, and you're sharing that journey with the world. Your life should look so full and complete that she begins to wonder if she's missing out, if she's falling behind in a game she thought she had control over. This sense of exclusivity isn't about acting aloof or cold, but about setting boundaries that highlight your self-respect and self-worth. It's about making her realize that your attention is not something she can take for granted. If she wants it, she has to earn it by showing that she genuinely values what you bring to the table. She has to recognize that you're not like other men who will chase after her when she ignores them. You're the man who walks away, who pulls back, who sets his own terms and lives by them. Moreover, this sense of being unreachable goes hand in hand with being consistent in your actions. It's not just a temporary tactic, it's a lifestyle. When you make this shift, it's not about playing games or manipulating her. It's about becoming a man who has his own principles and boundaries. You stop bending to the whims of someone else's mood or decisions. Your value isn't determined by how often she acknowledges you or how frequently she decides to pay attention. Your value is inherent in who you are, and by making yourself less available, you force her to come to terms with the reality that her choices won't dictate how you live your life. This approach also has a profound impact on how she sees you emotionally. When you give her space to miss you, to wonder about your life, and to think about why you're not constantly seeking her out, it puts you in a position where you are no longer chasing her validation. In fact, it's her ego that will begin to take a hit. She'll question whether she still has access to you, and the uncertainty will spark interest. There's a deep psychological element at play here. Humans are naturally drawn to things they can't easily have. When you make yourself scarce, she will begin to realize that she might lose the chance to have you in her life if she doesn't act quickly. The final layer of this is the transformation in how you view yourself. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is waiting for her attention to feel validated. You start seeing yourself as the kind of man who has standards, who knows his worth, and who understands that his value is not negotiable. You are someone who doesn't have to beg for attention because you have so much going on in your own life. You're a man of action, and your actions speak louder than any words or text messages. By creating this aura of exclusivity, you send a clear message that your attention is something precious, and if she wants it, she must rise to the occasion and show that she deserves it. When you stop chasing, when you stop bending over backwards to make yourself available, you start a transformation that's not just about her, it's about you. There's something incredibly powerful that happens when you begin to focus on your own life. The key here is to understand that you are not defined by the pursuit of any woman's attention. The minute you stop trying to appease, impress, or win someone over, you reclaim your power. This power comes from the understanding that you don't need her to validate your worth. Your worth is intrinsic. You have already put in the work, and you've built a life that's fulfilling, meaningful, and full of purpose, regardless of whether or not she's in the picture. When you detach from the need to seek her approval, you allow yourself the freedom to become the kind of man who lives by his own rules, his own desires, and his own standards. This shift isn't about being passive or cold. It's about becoming emotionally self-sufficient. You stop relying on her presence or absence to define your emotional state. You recognize that you are your own source of validation. You do not need her attention to feel good about yourself, and this is what makes you dangerous. You become unpredictable. You stop being that man who is easily influenced by how she behaves. When you're not chasing, you create distance. Not just physically, but emotionally. You give her space to wonder what's going on with you, what you're doing, and why you're not reaching out. And in this silence, she will begin to feel a void, and that void will prompt her to reflect on your value. She'll begin to question whether or not you still care, but more importantly, she'll begin to feel the weight of the absence of your attention, and it will start to affect her. It's critical that you don't allow her absence to break your focus. When you redirect your energy, you need to do it with a clear sense of purpose. You need to immerse yourself in areas of your life that are important to you. You need to elevate the things that bring you fulfillment and make you the best version of yourself. This is not about getting her to come back or trying to make her jealous. This is about becoming a man who is so fully engaged in his own life that anyone who enters it must meet a high standard. You begin to push yourself to become better than you were yesterday, whether that's in your physical condition, your career, or your emotional maturity. When you invest in your own growth, you signal to the world, and to her, that you are not someone who can be easily ignored or dismissed. Your life becomes a reflection of the effort you put into it, and she will notice that your focus is no longer on her. You've shifted from seeking her approval to becoming a man who attracts respect because of the way he lives his life. This is where true power lies, not in desperation, not in appeasing, and certainly not in begging for attention. It's in the mastery of your own life, in living it with intention, and in making it clear that you are not available for anyone who doesn't understand or appreciate your worth. This is the kind of man that other people, especially women, can't help but be drawn to. Women in particular are attracted to men who have a life outside of them, who are not consumed by their relationship or by seeking approval. When you shift your focus away from trying to win her back, you begin to show her a man who is self-sufficient, who stands on his own 2 feet, and whose energy isn't dependent on her reciprocating. And that, my friends, is the moment when her ego starts to feel the burn. You must also recognize that by shifting your focus, you inadvertently raise your standards. You stop accepting half-efforts. You stop tolerating a lack of reciprocity. You create boundaries that she must respect. When you're not chasing, when you're not putting her on a pedestal, you give yourself the power to walk away from situations that don't serve you. And this is where many men falter. They accept treatment that doesn't align with their worth because they fear the loss of someone they think is irreplaceable. But when you have the mindset of abundance, when you've elevated your life and your value, you stop fearing the loss of anyone who isn't fully invested in you. Instead, you become the kind of man who recognizes that if she doesn't appreciate you, then it's her loss, not yours. You're living your best life, and if she's not willing to meet you there, then you keep moving forward, unbothered and unfazed. This shift also brings a level of emotional stability that makes you more attractive than ever. Women are drawn to emotional stability because it signals that you are someone who can handle challenges with grace, someone who isn't easily rattled by external circumstances. When you stop chasing, you begin to set the emotional tone of the relationship, or lack thereof. You're no longer at the mercy of her moods, her attention, or her behavior. You become the one who defines the emotional atmosphere because you are not easily swayed. This kind of emotional stability is one of the most powerful forms of attraction. It shows her that you're not someone who will buckle under pressure or constantly seek validation. You are calm, steady, and in control. And this is exactly the kind of man that women crave because he represents a sense of security, a sense of groundedness, and a sense of strength. Finally, when you stop chasing, when you start living your life with purpose and intention, something profound happens. You stop giving her the power to dictate how you feel. You take your emotional independence back. You are no longer waiting around for her to acknowledge you, to reach out, or to give you the green light to feel good about yourself. You've already decided that your happiness, your self-worth, and your peace of mind are not contingent on anyone else's actions. This emotional independence is not about being cold or distant. It's about being so fully in tune with yourself that no one can shake you. When she sees this, she'll realize that she's not the one holding the power anymore. You are. And that is when her ego starts to crumble. The The more you elevate yourself and your life, the more she'll see that you are not someone to be taken for granted. And when she starts to feel the loss of your attention, the power shifts entirely in your favor. In situations like these, it's essential to recognize that the more a woman ignores you, the more your silence and detachment act as a mirror, reflecting back to her the emotional weight of her actions. One of the most crucial realizations you need to have is that silence is not a passive action. It is an active display of your strength and confidence. It is a signal to her that you will not be easily moved. You see, women are conditioned to seek validation and attention, especially from men they are interested in. When a woman ignores you, she is testing not just your emotional reactions, but your resilience and emotional control. When you stop reacting, when you refuse to play into the drama and start acting with complete emotional discipline, you convey to her that you are not someone who can be easily rattled. You're no longer attached to her or her behavior, and that gives you power, more power than you realize. The longer you hold your ground, the more you show her that you're not desperate. You are not like the other men who may come running at the first sign of withdrawal. Your absence, or more importantly, your refusal to chase, will begin to unsettle her. She will start to wonder if she's losing you, and this feeling of loss, of potentially losing someone who isn't desperate to get her attention, is what cracks her ego. You are taking away the comfort that comes from knowing you'll always be there when she decides to return. You are telling her, without words, that your time and energy are precious, and they won't be spent chasing after someone who isn't giving the same level of commitment. This shift in dynamic is psychologically impactful. It forces her to reassess her position and the importance she places on your attention. When a woman feels that her usual strategies of gaining attention or keeping someone emotionally invested are failing, it triggers her ego. She has to deal with the reality that she is no longer in control of the situation. And as much as her ego might want to downplay it, on a deeper emotional level, she will begin to feel the weight of your absence. When you stop showing up for her emotionally, you create a space in which she must do the emotional labor. She is left with the task of navigating her own feelings, something she may not be used to. This dynamic shift also creates intrigue. As you hold your ground, the more elusive you become, and the more she may start to think about you. The more she ignores you, the more she realizes the value of what she's lost or is at risk of losing. Your indifference becomes a tool that works to destroy her ego. But it's not something that's done with malice. It's done because you respect yourself enough to detach from her games. The key here is not about playing tricks or manipulating her. It's about showing her that you have your own life, that you are not waiting around for her to come to her senses, and that your emotional state is not dependent on whether or not she's giving you attention. You've taken your energy away from the situation, and in doing so, you've reasserted your autonomy. This sends a powerful message. You are not someone who will be ignored and remain passive. You are a man of action, and your actions reflect your worth. The longer she's left to her own devices, the more she'll begin to recognize that you are an integral part of her life, and that losing you isn't something she can take lightly. This creates a sense of urgency in her that works in your favor. The reality is that as long as she knows she can have your attention whenever she feels like it, she has no incentive to act differently. But when you deny her that luxury, when you put distance between you and her emotionally, you force her to address her behavior, to question what she truly wants, and to feel the effects of her actions. What's important to remember here is that this doesn't mean you are playing a game or trying to manipulate the situation. You're simply withdrawing your emotional investment from a situation where it's not being reciprocated. By doing so, you're showing that your attention is a gift, something that is earned, not something to be taken for granted. Women, more than most people, understand the value of attention and affection, but they also respect men who have a sense of self-worth that doesn't hinge on their presence. By not chasing after her when she pulls away, you're showing that you have high standards for yourself and for your relationships. You are someone who values his time and energy, and that in itself is one of the most attractive qualities you can possess. The silence you offer in the face of her withdrawal is, in a way, a challenge to her. It's a challenge to her ego, to her sense of entitlement, and to her emotional control over the situation. You're forcing her to confront her own emotions without relying on you to be the emotional anchor. You're showing her that you don't need her validation to feel secure, to feel valuable. It's a powerful statement about self-sufficiency and emotional independence. When she realizes that she can't control the dynamic the way she once did, it's a blow to her ego. And that's the key. Her ego is the part of her that needs constant reassurance, constant validation, and constant attention. When you stop feeding it, when you withdraw the emotional fuel she's used to, she's left with an empty space to reflect on her actions. As time goes on, this withdrawal of energy will begin to have a cumulative effect on her. Initially, she may feel empowered by her ability to ignore you, thinking that she holds the power in the situation. But as the silence stretches on and she's no longer receiving the emotional responses she expects from you, she'll start to second-guess herself. Her thoughts will begin to revolve around you and why you're not reacting the way she thought you would. This shift in focus, from her usual control to questioning her own behavior, creates internal conflict, and internal conflict is what begins to erode her ego. The more you maintain your silence, the more she has to confront the truth of the situation. This is the moment when the balance of power shifts, not because you've done anything overt, but because you've chosen to take control of your own emotional state and refuse to play the games she was used to. The final step in destroying her ego is all about what happens when she realizes that you are no longer chasing her validation. By now, the emotional shift that has taken place between the two of you is clear. She knows that you are not the same man who would have once followed her lead, sought her approval, or pined for her attention. The longer this silence and emotional detachment persist, the more you begin to show her that you are no longer at her mercy. The truth is that when a woman sees that you are no longer chasing her, she starts to reassess her own behavior and feelings. She is forced to take a deeper look at herself. In the past, she may have been the one who called the shots, knowing that you were there, ready to give her your attention at a moment's notice. But now, when that attention is withdrawn, she is left with no choice but to reflect on the role she's played in the dynamic. This shift forces her to deal with a truth she may not have wanted to face, that you are not as emotionally dependent on her as she once thought. The very foundation of her ego, her sense of power in the relationship, is being chipped away, and there's little she can do about it. It's a painful realization for anyone whose ego is built on the ability to control, to manipulate, or to dictate the terms of a relationship. When she sees that you are perfectly fine without her, it shakes her to her core. She starts to understand that you are not someone who needs her approval, her attention, or her validation. You have already cultivated a life, a sense of self that is independent of her. This realization is not easy for her ego to handle, and that's exactly what makes it so impactful. The ego thrives on attention, and when that attention is withheld, it experiences a blow that it may not be able to recover from quickly. It's not that you have to say or do anything to provoke this reaction. It's the simple fact of you no longer being emotionally available in the same way you once were. This is what destroys her ego, the realization that you have options, that you are not sitting around waiting for her to make a move, and that you don't need her to complete you. Your life, your emotional state, and your happiness are no longer contingent upon her behavior. This is a stark contrast to what she's used to, and it forces her to confront a hard truth. She's not the center of your world. For someone who may have expected that they could have you whenever they wanted, this is a revelation. It shows her that you are a man of value, someone whose time and attention must be earned, not taken for granted. In addition to this, her own ego will struggle with the sudden lack of control. If she was used to calling the shots, to being the one who decided when and how the relationship progressed, she now finds herself in uncharted territory. The power dynamic has shifted, and she's no longer the one holding all the cards. This destabilizes her emotional world because she now has to question her own role in the relationship. She must deal with the fact that you're no longer seeking her approval, no longer looking to her for validation. Your emotional independence is the perfect mirror for her ego, forcing her to ask herself why she thought she could manipulate the situation. This is what rattles her at her core. It's not just that you're ignoring her, it's that you've taken control of your own emotional world, and in doing so, you've removed her power over you. She may not show it right away, but deep down, she will feel the shift. The truth is, when a person's ego is bruised, it doesn't always manifest in obvious ways. She may not immediately beg for your attention or attempt to regain control. Instead, she might try to keep her distance or act indifferent. But don't be fooled by these surface-level reactions. Beneath that exterior, her ego will be struggling to regain the power it once had. She will wonder what's happening, why you're not reacting the way you used to, why you're no longer chasing her. The lack of your attention will force her to confront the fact that she's losing you. And that realization is the exact thing that begins to break her ego down. The longer you stay emotionally unavailable, the more her ego will begin to self-destruct. At first, she might try to ignore it, brush it off, or convince herself that it's no big deal. But the truth is, the more she realizes that you're not desperate for her validation, the more her sense of control will slip through her fingers. It's like a slow burn that intensifies with time. She will start to question whether you ever truly needed her, or if she was just one of many options in your life. This uncertainty is what will gnaw at her ego. Her sense of power, once built on the knowledge that she could have you whenever she wanted, begins to erode. And in that erosion, her ego is forced to reckon with the truth that you are not emotionally dependent on her. Eventually, she will come to realize that her emotional hold over you is gone, that she no longer has the ability to manipulate your emotions or dictate the pace of the relationship. This realization is crucial for her ego's unraveling. The more you withdraw and create space, the more she will be forced to do the emotional work herself. She will have to confront the fact that she no longer has control over the situation, and as she struggles with this loss, her ego will continue to take hit after hit. She may start to feel that she is losing something important, something she can't replace. This process, This gradual erosion of her ego's grip is what ultimately leads to her coming to terms with the fact that you are no longer emotionally invested in her in the way she thought you were. This doesn't mean that she will immediately chase after you or beg for your attention, though she might. What it means is that the power dynamic has shifted. You are no longer someone she can push around emotionally. You've shown her that you are not defined by her attention, that your emotional well-being is not something she can control. This realization doesn't just alter how she sees you, it alters how she sees herself in relation to you. And that, ultimately, is the key to breaking her ego. Once she understands that she is no longer in control, her ego will be forced to confront its own limitations. This is what you want to achieve. You want to take back control of the dynamic and let her experience the emotional weight of losing that control. It's not about manipulating her, but rather about asserting your emotional boundaries and forcing her to reckon with the fact that you are no longer emotionally available for someone who takes you for granted. As this process unfolds, you may not see immediate changes, but the shifts in the power dynamic will become clear over time. Her ego will have taken a significant hit, and the emotional distance you've created will force her to confront the reality of the situation. She will either recognize your worth and begin to respect your emotional boundaries, or she will continue to withdraw and lose the opportunity to reconnect. What truly matters here is that you maintain your emotional stability and continue to prioritize your own well-being. This journey is not about winning her back, it's about reclaiming your own power and teaching her the value of your attention. Whether or not she chooses to come back into your life, you will have shown her that you are not someone to be ignored or taken for granted. Your self-respect and emotional independence will have set the tone for any future interaction, whether it's with her or with someone else, and ultimately that is the key to becoming a man who commands respect, not through force, but through the quiet strength of knowing his own worth.